Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to review a book that was written by a relatively new author. At the time of this video, which is in 2025, he has released 2 books. I have only read the second book that he has released, which is a collection of short, scary stories called From the Metronome to the Feather Pen by Gage Sears. I'll try to put the title above me. I'll also put it in the description below. Now, I came across this guy in a Facebook group where he was kind of talking about his book a little bit, promoting it, and I got curious, so I went onto Amazon and looked it up, and there was an excerpt from one of the short stories in here that's called "'Twas the Scream Before Christmas," and I thought it sounded kind of interesting. It's obviously a take on Bad Santa. And so I ended up finding the author on social media and just kind of said, yes, this is definitely something that I would probably be interested in reading at some point. And he offered to send me a free copy in replace of a review. Of course, I'm not going to let that, dictate how my review is going to go. And of course, he wouldn't want that either. Like I said, I do not know this guy other than on social media. So that being said, let's take a look at this book and give you the pros and cons of what I think about it. Okay, when first looking at this book, we're going to go from the cover to the inside of it. I know they say don't judge a book by its cover, but we all do. So first up, I do like the cover. I think it's kind of interesting with a feathered pen in the metronome. I don't know how well you guys can see it. The title being in red can sometimes be a little hard to read, but on the cover, it's not too bad to have the dark color and the red for the title. However, on the back, it is really hard to read. It becomes very hard because of the coloring. So if you were in a store and you pulled this out, you can read it and you cannot read it at the same time. It just depends on the lighting because there is kind of a glare on this depending on how I have it, which means you might have a glare when reading it. I also asked my teenager what he thought about the back of it, and they too said that it was a little struggle at times to read. And of course, the more I know what the back says, it makes it easier to read, but I would just say that's a little note. And again, I do not know much about the publishing company, which is called Page Publishing. I don't know much about them to know what services they offer or price point or anything like that. At the time of this video, which is March of 2025, on Amazon this was listing as a paperback. I think it was on sale for $14, where the original price I guess was 17 something, and the Kindle version was like $9.99. I looked on Barnes & Noble and it showed a little higher price for the paperback. So I don't know if the price point is right for this book, but again, I understand that's not something that the author has control of when they're using another company. I've had experience with that, which I'll probably talk about in a later video. So that being said, the book itself is around 166 pages, so it's not that long of a book. That's why I'm curious of whether the price point to you as well seems kind of high at like $14. That's just something to throw out there. Again, I don't really know much about Gage Sears' relationship with his publisher, who controls what, and if he had much say in the artistic design, which I do, like I said, like the cover. It gave me an Edgar Allan Poe type vibe, and I do believe after I did a little research after this, I think he's into Edgar Allan Poe and like Stephen King, and I had a vibe with that when I was reading this book. So let's now talk about the stories inside. Okay, so let's talk about the inside of the book, the stories that are in there. There are 14 scary stories in this book, and I would say out of the 14 I read, a good chunk of them did stand out to me, and I did feel like they had a Stephen King, Edgar Allan Poe kind of vibe to them. And I feel like this author does have potential. I want to make sure I make that well known. I do feel like he has potential. I feel like some of the stories you could definitely tell were written when he was younger, I believe, because he did mention, I think the first story, or one of the stories I should say, was written when he was like 12, and then other ones over the years. Again, this was released after his first debut book, which was called The Watcher, which I have not read, and I'm on the fence of whether I'll read that one or not. But let me know if you have down below. I would love to know if you've heard of Gage Sears. Have you read his book, The Watcher? Or have you read this book as well? Now, out of the 14, I would say some of them definitely made me react. Like there were some of you like, ew, or like, oh my god. So that's always a good sign if a book can make me do an audible reaction to it when I'm reading it. If it makes me mad, sad, angry, or I make an actual verbal, like I said, outburst because of something that was read or wrote. So that's what I think was a plus. Like I do feel like out of the 14, I enjoyed most of them, kind of thing. There was one I couldn't get into, but that's just because I think I had to do with more numbers, and I'm not always that kind of person when I'm reading a scary story to like stories that kind of involve, we'll say, I think it's called Binary Man. That one I couldn't get into, but I think someone else could. Some of the story titles, I figure I should tell you a couple of them, is 'Twas the Scream Before Christmas, which was the one I had a sample of reading and I enjoyed. Grace Whittaker, The Miner, Carpenter, Traffic, I think the one, I want to say it was either Stop, oh my goodness, I cannot talk. Truck Stop Trolls, that might have been interesting, but there was another one. The Price of Butterfly Wings wasn't too bad as well, but there was like 14 in there, and I would say out of the 14 again, I would say definitely over half of them that I didn't mind reading, and I do feel like some of them could be expanded upon as a novel if he wanted to do that. I feel like some of them have that potential to be taken from a short story to something more. This collection gave me a Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, I think that's the series. Yeah, I think that kind of vibe, but for older people, like, because there are definitely topics in here that you wouldn't let a young kid read. So all in all, he has potential. I feel like he's similar, like on the verge of being like a Stephen King-ish. But I will say the only downside to this book is there were times there were mistakes. Both my teenager and I noticed that I think it ended up being 5 to 6 mistakes in there. Might have been the wrong word used. Maybe one sentence kind of was missing a couple words to make it more clear. And there was just some other things. I think one was a wrong name used, I think. So little things like that. But I don't know who their editing person is. Is it the publishing company? Is it them themselves? Is it friends, family? So I don't know who looks over it. I don't know if Gage noticed the mistakes like after it was published. If you are watching Gabe and you're curious of what we found, in case you didn't, contact me privately and I will let you know. I don't want to list off all of them because I don't want to take away from somebody else reading the book, because I do feel you should give this guy a chance. And I do feel like he has potential. I feel like with a little more editing, it would probably be really cool to see him do a collection of scary stories, or to take one of these stories, like I said, and expand upon it into a bigger book. And maybe he's done that. Again, his debut novel is The Watcher. I have not read that one yet. And this one I thought, it was really hard to figure out what to give it when I was thinking about the length of it, the price of it, which I try not to hold the price against him because obviously, like I said, he may not have control over that. I gave it a tentative 3. I think if there wouldn't have been the mistakes I found in it, it would have bumped up a little higher to maybe like a 3.5 out of 5 stars. But again, it's hard to say. Like, I don't know what was cool. Before I forget, at the end he had a little afterwards, and it actually talked about inspiration for the stories. And I thought that was a cool little touch to a short story collection. Is kind of talking about, hey, this is what inspired the story. I think that's a nice little touch, and I think I've had other authors do that too, where they've kind of said what inspired that. But all in all, I would give it a 3 out of 5 stars. I do, like I said, feel he has potential, so I would love for you to give him a chance. Being a new author is hard, especially when you might not have the team behind you to help you grow farther. So you do rely on people like me and others to read your books, review them, and help get the word out. So again, this is an author I would really like to keep track of in the next few years and see what he produces then. And again, I may or may not buy The Watcher at some point and review that book as well. But let me know if you decide to read this book, and comment down below what you're currently reading. I would love to hear that. And I can't wait to kind of share my next video with you guys. Have a great day.